Cool. Live we like.
Mic is live, audio is on, so we should be good. Harrison, how you doing? Harrison's in the chat. He's just saying hello.
How you doing? How you doing?
Can you see that as well?
I can't.
Can't see that. That's
actually.
all right. Don't worry.
Let me.
Don't worry. So yeah, what we're going to do this just to give people a bit of an overview of what we got here. Hopefully that everyone can hear everything. If you can't hear anything or it sounds a little bit strange, please do say in chat so that we can amend it if possible. Because this is my first go at this, but it's obviously an attempt to make sure that your viewing pleasure is paramount. So we've got to make it as sweet and as tight as possible. But the main basis of this podcast really just as a sort of it's not going to be a one-off. With the aim is to try and do as many episodes as we feel comfortable doing, but just to give people an overview of the inside knowledge of a personal trainer and how that works in the motorcycle industry, how how these people prepare, how the motorcyclists and in general how people prepare for elite sport. And I think it's key, and people really want to know. So we've got a lot of bike fans that follow. That they really want to know, and they really want to understand what makes these guys tick. Because the performance is essentially a small percentile of how they prepare. The preparation is probably 75%, and then there's just a tiny little bit left, which is the performance. But I don't want to steal your thunder. I want you to sort of crack on and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here, really, and just so we can sort of listen to what you've got.
Quick background, I guess. Like harp on about my life history, but always had a fascination with bikes through family and dad, and always enjoyed sport and health and fitness, and studied that at uni. Kind of came out of that. Bumbled around in gyms and the fitness industry, and really thought, hold on a minute, two different things I really enjoy. I enjoy my bikes, and enjoy health and fitness. So how can I kind of squeeze these two together? And after a kind of lot of time and a lot of hard work, I managed to get a rider on board and start working with him. And really, it was an avenue from that. I kind of knew that he was a kind of vessel. I did a really good job with him. That things could happen, and I could end up doing some quite cool stuff with some amazing people, which I was very lucky that I was able to do over a few years. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all started off. And I certainly formulated a plan like that as well. So I would have said that it wasn't a fluke. I kind of had an idea of how I wanted to do things and how I was going to approach it. Went to race meetings. Hung around a lot, saw what people were doing, investigate who the trainers, who the coaches were, what kind of things they were doing, what kind of things were the riders doing, and kind of built up, formulated what I thought would go well together to give rider, the edge physically and mentally that they would need to perform at their best, basically.
Okay. We've got a couple of issues with the sound here, which I thought we might end up having. I think we've got a bit of an echo still, which I was a bit concerned of. So this is a question really to the chat. Really, are you getting echo on me or are you getting echo on my guest? I think it's going to be the latter. So we're going to try and eliminate this somehow. Right. Okay. So this is something that I wasn't expecting, but we're going to try and combat this now. Somehow.
It's echo from my end.
Yeah, I think so. And it could be just because it's coming through Skype. So we need to find out how we can eliminate that. That's interesting. So I've tried to mute it on your end, but I'm wondering if it's... So, can you just?
You still got an echo now?
Don't know. That might have disappeared. Can it?
I wonder. Any echo now? Better?
Ah, right. Okay, that's better.
Better, is it?
No echo. Yay!
Okay.
Okay, I think I know what I did. Sorry about that, folks. Teething problems, but yeah,
Yeah, these things happen,
that's
don't
a
they?
great intro, really. Well, yeah, it's exactly what people what people wanted to hear from you, really, just to find out a bit about yourself. But that's a great background. But you've got quite a bit of a history with coaching high profile athletes, I guess you could say, high profile athletes, high profile personalities. Have you? Don't be afraid to name drop. It's all about getting
Yeah,
coverage. Who have you
I've
trained? Who have you trained? Tell us.
worked with all sorts. I guess if we're talking motorcycles, I don't know what I should do. I've worked with quite a lot. Obviously, the main people that I've worked with is Shakey Byrne. I worked with him for 4 seasons, 3 of which were championship winning seasons. I've worked with Jake Dixon. I've worked with Murray Hambro, who's now a very good coach in his own right and got a very good gym going on. Go check him out. Gino Ria, who's also a very good coach himself now. Crumbs. I started working with a guy when I started out called Stefan Capella.
We're just seeing him on the slideshow right now.
Okay, he was a very good endurance racer, and he was the first guy I worked with, and he went on to do Le Mans, and he was and did get in pretty phenomenal shape for that. And he rode for a private team, and I think they might have even come in the top 10. They did unbelievably well, and he did a couple of like ridiculous back-to-back stints, which anybody who's done any kind of endurance riding or even just a weekend of racing knows how tiring it is. And he did amazingly well, and really it kind of went out from that, really. I'm enjoying working with a couple of younger guys now. I think Harrison was on here just now. Another guy, Jakey, who's also doing quite well. It's interesting. The thing that I kind of laugh at the most is everyone's kind of looking for the magic. What is it? Is A, B, and C gonna give me D? And the one thing that I've learned is everybody's different. It's the same whether you're training Joe Bloggs or you're training Shane Shakey Byrne. You kind of have your idea about all the key elements that need to go together to create somebody who can perform at their best. But there also has to be a reasonable amount of flexibility in that because everybody's different. And there might be some non-negotiables that riders aren't prepared to give up. Anyone out there who rides a motorbike and races probably knows there's all sorts of quirky weird little things that you enjoy doing that you think make a difference but probably don't. But if some of these winning races, why would you change it? So, yeah, there's a lot of weird and wonderful things that go on.
So go on then, tell us who's got little weird things that people do. I mean, you don't have to name names, but what are the sort of things that people do?
I'm sure Shane wouldn't mind me saying, but when I first started working with him, I had him doing some crazy stuff nutritional wise, which it served its purpose at the time. But he said to me, he said, look, when it comes to race weekend, I'm not changing anything. It's worked up to now. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I would go into the motorhome and I would go, look, what is all this, sweets and stuff? But in between races, he was adamant. This was the one thing, non-negotiable, I'm not changing, is he has like Uncle Ben's rice, that you'd stick in the microwave with like sausages and baked beans in between a race. And,
wow.
it's like you have this kind of set pattern as in your head as a coach what needs to be done to create elite performance, to make sure that at a race or a given moment that person's at the best that they can be. But sometimes it's not just nutrition. Like, would have Shane ridden any better if he had some high protein lean meat? Probably not. A lot of the time it is just create an environment where somebody feels good. And if you're taking stuff away from that person, and it's not making them feel good, chances are it's going to have a negative effect on their performance. So, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
So why is that then? Does it
about me changing really?
Yeah. So why is that then? What is it? Is it better to have like a happy rider that is comfortable and relaxed? Because let's say they were out of stock of Uncle Ben's rice and Shakey was about to do a race. How would that make him feel? Would he feel like I'm going to be a different rider because I haven't got my same routine?
I think a lot of it is down to suspicion. Superstition. Sorry, where you think if something works, then you don't want to mess with it, right? You're not gonna mess with it at all. And I also think that you've got this fine line, is what you need to do to create elite performance, but also you don't want to rock the boat too much that it's going to affect that person. So as a coach, you have to have that ability, have that skill to go, if we change it, it's not really going to make any difference. Like say for example, if Shane was doing that and in race 2 he would be 20 places further down the field, then I'd be going, there's something not quite right here that we're doing between race 1 and race 2 that's not really working. But like I say, if it's not broke,
So he wouldn't trust you with the Uncle Ben's rice, and he wouldn't say, "Look, Grant, it's up to you now. You got to bring this Uncle Ben's rice. If I don't have it, it's all your fault."
It's all down to his, Thursday night shopping trip, pre-race weekend shopping trip, and Petra deals with the Uncle Ben's rice and baked beans and stuff.
Brilliant. It's weird because I think in some sort of weird little ways we all have our own. Like we always put like the right shoe on first or the right sock on first, or I don't know. It's weird. Or like I'm playing with a pen and it's got the sort of thing is got to line up with the logo on the bottom of it. Silly little things like that, because it's not like you're gonna have a bad day if you don't have it. But like you say, it's just kind of routine. And I know before I get on a bike, it's not a strict routine, but you feel comfortable having done it.
I also think there's an element of, if everything's done in a routine, there's an element of therapy to it. You know what's happening, you know what's comfortable, you know where you're going to be at this time, you know how that's working, you know how this is working. You need to be able to function like that in any level of elite sport, whether you're running the 100 meters or doing a motorcycle race. But you also need to be able to deal with, can I swear?
Yeah.
when shit doesn't go right. So it's weird. You've got this kind of situation where everything being normal is good, but you also need to be having your athlete in a mindset where when nothing goes to plan, you can still, pull it out the bag or perform to your best of your ability, or more still, when things go completely wrong, that you're able to have enough resilience to come back and do better next time. And to be honest, that was one thing that I learned from Shane that was most impressive, was his resilience. So somebody out there might be able to check the stats on this, but I think it was something ridiculous. I think pretty much the first 3 years that I worked with him, whenever he fell off in race 1, he came back and won race 2.
Wow.
Yeah, check. Some statos might be able to check out that. I'm pretty sure it was for the first 3 seasons. Not that he fell off that much, but having that resilience, I think, is key.
Yeah.
And in any top level sport, I think if you were going to teach any kid or anybody coming up, the ability to deal with when shit isn't going well. You even look at it now. Look at MotoGP. Look at Maverick Vinales. When things going right, he's unbeatable. But he's either unbeatable or complete, not where he should be as a factory rider. And I think that's a lot, he's created this issue. Now it's a massive thing that he can't start, that if he's down the field and everyone's talking about it and he's not on social media anymore. And it's now like a little, he's got that on his shoulder. And I think he's going to struggle to change that.
Yeah, it's a real... It's an odd one, isn't it? And I think preparation. If you've got that elitism in your head, and I think the preparation for it is everything. And I think this is why nowadays you've got that. It's a step change, in the sort of club races, early 80s, early 90s even, there was very little structure around people riding motorcycles. In fact, it was probably the opposite to what it is now. There were more people smoking and drinking and, living the life, overweight riders. God forbid, if you were seen in the paddock these days as being overweight, people would look at you and go, he's got no hope. But some of the best riders that I've ever seen don't care about their weight, as long as they've got a bike that will take it. I've seen some of the biggest riders ride a bike faster than some of the smaller riders. I think it's just, if you're small enough, it gets into your head that you've got an advantage and it makes you faster in some ways. I mean, we're all on this kind of desperate journey to try and lose weight and be the lightest that we can. So we've got that advantage. And then you get passed by some guy that's, 3 stone heavier than you. And you're like, he's cheating. He's got to be cheating. Yeah. And athletes the world over say exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's weird. Again, I'm going out on a limb here, but I reckon if you got a psychologist in and interviewed every top rider, I reckon a lot of them would have some sort of disordered eating patterns because, the weight thing, there's no doubt about it. And whether you're 12% body fat or 15% body fat, is that really going to make a difference to how much quicker you are? Probably not. Does it make a difference in here? Because you think that you're in the best shape you've ever been, so therefore I must be able to perform better than I did before, or that guy, or that guy, or that guy. I think that's when it gets into people's heads.
So it's interesting. Yeah, I don't want to go off a tangent because I could spend hours talking about this, because the psychology of a motorcycle rider is just, I think it's like an entity that is far greater than any normal human being can ever understand. But do you think, thinking about like athletes, for example, like we're talking about athletics, do you think this is why a lot of people believe in things like God? Do you think like faith has a lot of things? Do you think that Shakey is actually, he's implementing a system that works for him because it gives him a greater faith to be able to do better, where some people believe in God and say, I won this race because God was behind me and he was pushing me along, and I believe that. I believe that I was, I believe that we had a 12th man on the pitch in a football game, and this sort of thing, it changes. The mental side of a sport is somewhat greater than a physical side, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And you need all those elements around you. If you haven't got faith in yourself or your mechanic or your team or your tyres, or if you're an athlete, on your nutrition or your coach or whatever it is, you have to have all those pieces of the jigsaw together and working. And I think, you hear it a lot in bike racing, right? The package isn't right. And it might just be one little tiny thing, one little piece of the jigsaw that's out, and that just means that it doesn't function. And I think, thinking back to, Paul Bird Motorsport, everything is very well put together. Everyone knows their job. It's a slick operation, but they're a team that's been around for a long time. They've worked with a lot of people. They've been in MotoGP and come back, what they must know as a team. And, when something isn't right in that jigsaw puzzle, they take the piece out and replace it with another one, and it all slots together quite well. And I think, the complexities, like you were saying, of a motorcyclist's brain, it definitely overlaps into other sports, definitely. That you could argue there may be more pieces of the jigsaw. If an athlete, say, for example, a 400-meter runner, maybe they don't have so many pieces. They're not, worrying about tyres or, engine configurations or, tyre pressures or whatever it may be. Their kind of thought processes are just, right, I've done all this, now it's just me and the track. Whereas, you're on a motorbike, you've got the track, the weather, other riders, there's a hell of a lot going on in your head. And I think that's why, I don't know, maybe at your level, you might see people that have quite a big continuum of performances. 1 week they're up here and the next week they're nowhere, because trying to replicate that all the time is a challenge. And that's why, the people that can do that in any sport are the ones that, crack on and make a good fist of it.
It's really interesting, actually. You touched on it earlier about the sort of the setup that you have at a race meeting, and it all sort of ties into the giving yourself the greatest advantage when you're performing at that particular level. And I think riders need to feel that they're being looked after. And I think if you surround yourself with, simple, silly things like team hoodies and umbrellas and people that you don't have to pay for tea and coffee because it's in the VIP suite, and people looking after you, people that are able to clean your visor and make sure that your gloves are there, because God forbid, you might find that I'll go out to the garage and go, where did I put my gloves? Or is my lap timer on? Or is the transponder on? If you've got half a dozen people that are kind of doing all that for you, that's one less thing to learn about, or to concentrate on, because obviously you've got plenty to do on your plate anyway, especially if you're racing at that level. But having a performance team, a high performance team like Paul Bird Motorsports, how did they sort of work together? Did they sort of get quite stressed, or was it quite relaxed? How was it?
I think you always, I think stress, anxiety, pressure are things that you have to deal with, and you need them to be around. You're any kind of performance at the top, whether you want a promotion at work or, you need to be able to exert stress and anxiety onto yourself and deal with it and use it in a positive way. I just think a team like that with that much experience, they're always going to be tough to beat in that championship. Always. They've always had good and great riders on their bikes, I know, but like any team, sometimes things go to plan, sometimes things don't. Sometimes that person does a good job, sometimes that person doesn't. Sometimes bits fall off a bike, sometimes it's just part and parcel. And I think, good teams, if you think about other sports that you like, I like rugby and stuff like that, the best performing teams are the ones that when the shit hits the fan, they sort it out, they figure it out, they come back, they win their next game, or they come back and they score points in the next minute, or they're able to make decisions under pressure that often result in in a positive. Even if you think about at the world level, how many times riders like Valentino Rossi would be nowhere and then pull something out of the hat, and you think, how did he do that? Just that ability to be able to deal with the stress, deal with the anxiety, deal with the pressure, and turn it into a positive.
I find that sort of thing amazing, though. I think some of the greatest successes often precede the greatest failures, don't they? Because I've never really understood that, because I think once you've experienced failure, it's like, it's probably going to happen again. But that's me being a mere mortal thinking, I fell off last week. It's probably going to happen again, actually. But some people go faster. And I think it goes back again to surrounding yourself and people that go, you ain't going to fall off. You're brilliant. You're fast. And if Shakey's got people around him that go, don't worry, we're going to keep you warm, we're going to keep you dry, we're going to keep you fed, we're going to keep you watered. You're the best rider out there. And if you keep being told that, you end up believing it. Does his team? They obviously believe in him.
I think he's not told that. That's something that he tells himself.
Wow.
And I think all his personal preparation, training, everything he does, cycling, weight training, everything on the enduro bike, on the motocross bike, anything that he does is about getting his head right, so he knows that when he's on the start line, he's done everything that he can to prepare, and no one else is better prepared than he is. And then that's like a big tick, right? I'm ready to go. None of you lot are fitter, faster, healthier, than me. Let's kind of do it.
Is that confidence?
Even if, like, I've, the amount of people out there that will tell you something, especially in racing, but something else is happening. There's been numerous occasions where riders have been injured, and it's like, we don't say anything. It's like, I could probably talk about this now, and Shane would laugh about this if he ever sees it. But so I worked with him pre-season for the first time, 2014, and this is the coolest thing I've ever done. I'm working with this really cool guy. We get on super well. This is brilliant. The season starts in a couple of weeks. Been in the best shape ever, lowest body fat, ticking all the boxes. This is brilliant. During the week before the first round at Brands Hatch, his kids are playing on the climbing frame. Zach falls off and he goes to catch him like this and throws his back out completely. I can laugh about it now, but it was like, get a phone call, Grant. something's happened, and I'm like, oh, but he's like, I've broken. It tells me what's happened. Zach fell off, and I caught him, and I can't move. I'm literally, my back is, and I'm thinking, all right, okay, so, and I work with Shane's got a great guy that he uses for his physio and stuff, and goes to see him. It's like your back's in spasms. Not really a massive amount we can do. Shane's not really doesn't take painkillers or anything like that ever, even when he's had like the monumental accident that he's had 3 years ago, almost a day.
Wow.
And no one said anything. And if anyone's watched Shane do his pre-race warm up and he's crouching down like that, and it's my first. I'm sat in the paddock box, and I'm thinking, and he squats down. I think, I hope he can get off the floor. And he gets up and he's like walking over to his bike. I'm like, I think he might have done the double. So I was just thinking, Christ, if this guy can do the double and he can hardly move, it's going to be a good year.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Nobody said anything. Little things like, I think Alton Park in the same year, he'd won the race and he's like whispering away, going, I can hardly hold on to the bike. I got like the worst arm pump ever. I've never had arm pump before. And I was going shit. And, race 2, he ended up like trying to loosen his forearms off and, not saying anything to it. And he was just, completely fine. I think that whole thing where you can kind of compartmentalize stuff and just park it. It's back there. I'm on the bike now. Forget about it, and let's go. But
you've got to have a tremendous belief in your ability, haven't you? I think you've got to have a tremendous belief in the fact that, because some people, if they hurt themselves, that is a disadvantage, isn't it? And you think, oh, don't let my competitors know that I've hurt myself. Whatever you do, first and foremost. Secondly, is it going to hinder my performance? And he's got to have, and he's not the only one, I'm sure, that has such a high level of confidence in their ability that they think this shouldn't hinder my performance. I should be okay. I should still win. And to come out and still win like that, he must be in the back of his mind thinking, it's not that bad, actually. I can do okay here. I think I can win. Whereas everybody else behind him and around him are going, oh, my God, what is he going to be able to do it? They're probably more stressed about it than he is.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you see the common threads, not only that working with different riders, but also working with like athletes. They're all very different. You couldn't say that, but there is little things about them, about how they deal with setbacks and resilience and stuff like that. And, they're common, there are common traits, and you kind of look and you can tell, other people that I've spoken to, like Bradley Ray at the moment, I think he's going to be the next big thing. Definitely. I've only worked with him for like a couple of hours, and like, I don't know, you just get a feeling about somebody. And Jake was the same. Like Jake was the same. You just know, you're talking to him. And even though that when I worked with Jake in BSB, things were going badly for him then. They weren't going good for him at all. But, it's unwavering self-belief. I know I'm good enough to do this. This is going to happen, and just getting through.
It's phenomenal. I think, it's
you hear these stories, bloody hell, that's awful. And they're all laughing and joking about them. God, it was this, and the bike did this, and I couldn't do that, and so I enjoyed being in that environment. It was like, right, no matter what happens, we're going to go out 100% and do the business.
I'm intrigued, really, and there's probably people that are watching are thinking the same thing. What do you teach these guys that they don't already know? What can you tell them about their performance or their psyche? I mean, because you've almost, like, from an outsider looking in, you've almost got to think, well, the best person to advise somebody on success is somebody that's experienced that same level of success somewhere else. But you've got to kind of start somewhere. How do you tell him that, I know what I'm talking about here, you just listen to me, I'm going to direct you in the right direction? How does that work? How do you prepare for that?
You get them to tell you. I would. There's no point me telling him how to brake or apex or whatever. There's just no point. I have no clue about that. But if he can translate to me how something's going and how he's thinking, feeling on the bike, then I can go, okay, well, maybe we can work on this a little bit more. Maybe we can work on that a little bit more. I don't think I guess it's like any coach, right? You got somebody who coaches a football team that was a terrible player, but is an amazing coach. I think when it comes to coaching, your ability to be able to ask questions and just sit back, listen to the answer, ask another question, sit back, listen to the answer, and kind of build up a picture of what you need to do. And, always talking about Shane and everything all the time. But, we had a very different approach every year that we worked together. It was like the first year, it was like, I wanted 10% body fat and, crazy restrictive diets, and then the next year is right, we're going to do some different stuff. We're going to work on this. We're going to do that a different way. When he came to the gym, we did something different every time, because he's the kind of person that he gets not bored quickly, but if it's like weight training, he's like, I'm done with that now, bored of it. If it's cycling, right, I'm bored of that now, let's do something else. So keeping that constant variation, constant change happening helps. And, some coaches were like, you have to do this and you got to do that. And that's why you need that flexibility. You can't train two people the same. You just can't. But at the same time, I think, if Marc Marquez was training for 6 hours a week on a pogo stick, I reckon, next week everyone would be training 6 hours a week on a pogo. It's just the way it is. And they'd probably be doing it in secret. Like, and everyone's doing the same stuff. Everyone's cycling. Everyone's riding motocross. Everybody's doing strength and conditioning. Like Jonathan Ray posted an amazing video on YouTube of his kind of pre-season fitness tests and stuff. I messaged him saying, it's great, really great insight. But in my head, it's like, when you're dealing with numbers like that, where does it stop? So if you're going to go, right, I'm 12% body fat this season, then 10%, then 8%, it's like at some point, the numbers they're going to cause you more problems than good, because you're always trying to better them all the time. And they're not necessarily going to lead to a better performance. And I think that's why having that variation on your point of attack each year is definitely the way to go. And let's not even talk about motocross as a training tool.
Well, that's an odd one, isn't it? I mean, that's something that I've never really I can understand why they do it, but on the flip side to it, it's a bit like saying, I don't know, I need to toughen myself up for rugby. Let's go and sort of throw myself off a cliff. It doesn't really negate what you're trying to do on the circuit, but I understand it keeps you fit, because having done off-road, I know how physically difficult it is, but people are trying to be innovative and try something new that gives them the edge. I can only relate to, you must have remembered in one of the World Cups, must have been quite a while ago, I remember looking on the sidelines through the TV, and you can see some Kiwis on exercise bikes at the World Cup, and you're like, what's he doing? He's cycling on an exercise bike. The following season, everybody's doing it. But they won the World Cup. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah, it's weird. Like now, if you think about rugby, when they do full contact, people get injured, right? If you look at, say, Usain Bolt and his training program is, explosive Olympic lifting, and then he gets injured doing that, are people suddenly then going to go, he's got to stop Olympic lifting? Of course they're not. He needs to do that. The same way motorcycle riders need to ride motorbikes, whether it's a little paddock bike around the track or motocross or whatever. It's part and parcel of the training. And again, accidents happen. Talking about Shane again, I get the phone call. All right, Grant. Oh, mate, how's it doing? Yeah, Spain nice. Yeah, I'm in the hospital. You be like, oh, okay then. Yeah, don't tell anybody. And then I get, 24 hours later, get the picture message with the not the stitches, staples, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. And but no one ever knew. No one ever knew. So when I it's hard to draw comparisons. When I think about all this shit with Marc Marquez, I think, fuck, we know what we know. What we don't know is like this.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I think it's so good that, to speak to people that have that insider knowledge, because from all we get to see is, well, what's normally in the newspapers, what's on TV, and that is a tiny snapshot of what is actually happening. We hear about, Marc Marquez has damaged his shoulder, or he's not coming racing this time. But he will be coming back, and we see him get on a bike, and he finishes really well, and think, bloody hell, that was all right. In fact, he didn't do that well, actually, did he? Because we were all expecting him to win, but we don't know the full extent of what his damage that he's done to him. And actually, it's pretty severe. To stop a rider like that, if people like Jorge Lorenzo can snap their collarbone and then come back a couple of days later and ride and finish on the podium, an injury like that to somebody like Marc Marquez has got to be pretty bad to keep them out for nearly a year of riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, and I think I like cycling a lot, and you see somebody like Chris Froome that's been out for a year, and what he's gone through and had to come back, and people are like, oh yeah, he's not very good, and he's like, he's had a year out from the sport, even if he wasn't injured and just said, look, I'm going to take a year out, to then come back and perform. No one who does that. Nobody. I can't think of anybody that's had a year out and then come back and been right back.
If anything, it's the worst, isn't it? The worst case scenario is take a break from a sport and then come back. I don't really know anybody that's actually. And Marc Marquez is not human. He's somebody, he's from another planet. So I fully expect him to come back after a year out and perhaps give him a bit of time and probably win another world championship. But he will never be the same rider again. And unfortunately, when you have an injury like that, it does set you back. Yes, it sets you back physically, but you can prepare yourself again physically. But I guess it's what you excel at, isn't it? It's getting that psyche, getting that mental preparation back again. Because like I was saying before, like Shakey, even if he's had an accident, he can put it to the back of his mind. But there's probably 1% of doubt, possibly even 0.5% of doubt that will cross his mind before he gets out onto the grid.
I find it fascinating because no matter how unwavering your self-belief is, you still have to prove it to yourself. So Marc Marquez might be going, I've got this, but until he's proved it to himself. So if he'd won that wet race, whenever it was last weekend, I think that would have just launched him. He would have just been, right, I am back. He would have had that psychological dominance that he's got, but he didn't. He fell off, and he fell off twice, and you saw him at the end, and he was like, and you start to think, is this... I've never been in that position. I don't claim to know what he's thinking or feeling, but I've been around people that have been in that situation, and I can imagine, especially somebody who is as good as he is, struggling mentally to get that part of his game together.
Yeah, he's good. The good thing about that as well, and that's the sort of ideal thing about elite sport, is he puts himself in a situation where he is surrounded by people that he'll have an expert on physical health, he'll have an expert on mental health, he'll have his friends around him, he's even got his family around him, and it's the people that matter that bit by bit will bring him back to where he was. He won't be exactly the same, but it'll be bring somebody like that back to at least the winning formula. And Shakey would have had to have surrounded himself with similar sort of people, and and I'm under no illusion that a lot of his belief was created from his own self-confidence, which is what you need as any athlete. But and it's a big but, you've got to not think about the negativity. And I think one of the things that again we wanted to chat about was how you sort of install that into young riders as well, so their experience continuum, if you like, is so small because they might be 12 years old or 14 years old. How do you get somebody that young to deal with things like self-doubt? Because that's probably the earliest age where you really start to go, I'm not good at this. And it takes years. We're talking 20, 30 years afterwards where we go, actually, I'm the best. There's none better than me. But at that age, that's where the self-doubt creeps in.
If you think about it as like a normal kid, right, and a normal, when you're younger, you just have more self-doubt, unless you're like this new kid in 125 who's just, I don't know, just came down from outer space. Normal people have self-doubt. Normal people get anxious. Normal people have, their self-belief goes. So I think for young riders, it's important just to let them be, let them learn, let them have the crappy race weekends, let them... try and pep them up, but understand that it's okay to feel like that. And I think having that puts you in a stronger position later on down the line if you want to become a professional motorcycle racer, because you've got more experience. Whatever Maverick Vinales is going through now, he's had no experience of that up until the last couple of years. He's always been awesome. He's been great at everything. Starting and being in a pack beating up was never a problem when he was riding a 125. Was he riding a 125 or was it Moto 2?
No,
Moto 2.
I think...
Moto 3.
Yeah, he did Moto 3.
So that's something that has happened over time. And I think, again, like any top level sportsman, I worked with some young kids that were in Chelsea Academy and stuff, and it's like, they're told not to behave in a certain way, not to think in a certain way, not to feel in a certain way. But I think it's important at that age to have those emotions so you can learn. Because I was like this, I felt like this, and then that happened. I felt like this, and then that happened. And I think that gives you the experience to know and to build and to grow. And that's, as a young rider, I think that's the most. And also, make it fun.
Yeah.
Anything, as soon as you take the fun element out of it, as soon as you're kind of coming to people like me and asking about nutrition and meal plans and set training routines, and I'm always saying to make it fun, do what you enjoy, kick a football around, ride a bike, do some weights, do whatever you want to, and mix it up as much as you can. Because ultimately, as long as if you get on the bike and you're like, my God, I'm so tired after one race, I'm out of breath, then you're going to need to work on your fitness. If mentally, when it comes to the last lap, 8 riders are overtaking you because your head is popping, then you need to work on, your mindset at that point. So I think it's important to let things be organic, learn, have lots of different experiences, and learn from those. Because ultimately, you're going to learn far more from fucking up and your failures than you are going out there and wiping the floor with everybody, unless you're one of these freaks, Casey Stoner, what he did, came to Britain and just whipped everyone's ass and then went, it's just like, what?
But there was a lot of pressure on kids like him, though, wasn't there? I think, there's pressure on young riders to perform well because they see what sacrifices the older riders made when they were younger, and even their parents have made. And I think sometimes that's key. There's a lot of pressure on younger riders because they think, mum and dad have invested a lot of money in this, I better do well. But, as an instructor myself, what we try and sort of say to the dads more than anything is just let them ride. Because one of the things they come up to you in the paddock, and they often say this, they say, what gearing should we have here? What's the suspension setting should we have here? And I'm like, what? He's never ridden a geared bike before. Let's just get him out there and get him having some fun. This is the highest powered. They're only 37 horsepower, but they're the highest horsepower bike they've ever ridden. And and 5 more gears than they've ever ridden in a lot of cases. Just get them out there and just let them have fun. And they're racing them with their mates. They're messing up. They're going wide. They're cutting each other up. And you come in and they're buzzing for hours, and they stay in their leathers for about another 4 or 5 hours before we're due to go out. And the first thing that the old riders do when they come into the paddock is get out of their leathers, have a cup of tea, sit down, and some of us might even have a nap. That's if we haven't weed ourselves or anything in between. So it's really important to let the kids sort of develop their experiences, almost develop disappointment.
I think so. And again, I don't think this is just a motorcycle thing. I think this is across the board. We've got a football pitch behind here, and obviously the football and stuff started up recently. And like walking past and listening to the parents, I'm just thinking, wow, that kind of pressure on a kid. And I think Casey Stoner, massively talented, and his parents gave up everything for him. But boy, is he paying for it now. Yes, he's got a good life, but he's suffering massively with chronic fatigue syndrome, and that's dominating his life now. And I'm not an expert in that field, so but I do know a lot of people in professional sport that have suffered from that. I've worked with people that have suffered from it and come through the other side, and it's been commonplace that a lot of it has come from trauma and pressure as a kid. He was, I don't know how old he was when he left Australia, and have you read his book?
I've not read his book yet. I know, but he used to race with the same club I'm with at Bemsey.
Yeah. It's an amazing story, and he would get tied up with knots as a kid before riding these dirt track races in Australia, and the grief that his parents used to get from other parents that had a lot more money and gave their kids better bikes and stuff like that, and you can almost see it kind of mapping out. And I think that's why I've got ultimate respect for him, the fact that he said, I'm done with this now, I'm moving on, I've made enough money, I'm going to go and live wherever and do my thing.
It's clever, isn't it? And I think it was very brave for him. It's probably braver for him to stand up and say, look, I've got to retire, because one of the things that you're instilled as an elite athlete is to never quit, no matter what the problems are, psychological, you know, what's psychological, physiological. You know, even if your Valentino Rossi, he's 42 years old now, and he's had broken legs, he's had dodgy shoulders, and he's kept on going. And he hasn't necessarily always been winning, but it's that drive to succeed that has meant that I've got to keep going, I've got to keep winning, and it's almost like an addiction. And I think Casey Stoner had that to a degree where he would be so physically and mentally destroyed because of his illness that he just thought, I can't do this, A, for my own safety, and I've got a family now, and he just had to put one priority to one side and say, I got to focus on other things now. I'm still young, I'm still alive, got a young family, and I'll fair play to him. We never really big fans of his, but I think
no, I wasn't.
It's a brave man that does that. I think at his level.
It was reading his book that made me kind of think, wow, you know, what an amazing guy, what an amazing story. But you know, I think that, you know, it's tough if you take the fun out of something. Being a rider now is very different. You know, all the media stuff. If you don't like doing that stuff, you know, you're going to struggle no matter what sport you're in. And you think, you know, you look at footballers, you know, that give the same dreary scripted responses, and it's just like, why even bother interviewing them? Yeah, at least in MotoGP and bike racing, we've still got a little bit of some characters around that actually say what's on their mind, and it's quite refreshing, and Jack Miller and people like that. But, you know, Formula One, you see a Formula One press conference and they're all like lined up going, this is like the worst hour of my life. Make it end. You know,
it's very true, isn't it? Who was I having a conversation with the other day, and we were basically talking about that. It was a comparison between F1 and MotoGP, and the first thing that we compared was excitement, and that could come in the form of interviews off the track or overtaking on the track. And taking the overtaking to one side, you watch it because you want to have you are having an affinity with a rider. This is why people like Valentino Rossi, because he's a personable character and you can relate to him. He's like, wow, he's having fun. I like this. I like people that are having fun. Jack Miller, he's taken the mantle of being that personable kind of guy. Unfortunately, you got Formula One, and whether it's being ruled by the media that say, look, we've got an image to uphold here and the sponsors don't like you having fun, you've got to be serious because this is a serious sport. They've kind of gone, oh, okay. But actually, behind the scenes, some of them are all right. I think it's the media. And again, it goes back to what we were saying about what we see as such a tiny percentile of how an elite athlete performs and even shows himself. But image is everything now. You've got fat Formula One driver. There isn't one fat MotoGP rider. There isn't any.
It's weird. I think if MotoGP was as high profile as Formula One, you know, they would have somebody there going, say this, say that, don't say this, don't say that. But, you know, I don't think that happens in MotoGP and World Superbikes. They've still got that ability to kind of say what they want to a certain amount. I would, you know, I don't know about you, but I would like to see a lot more of it. I want to see, you know, I don't like such and such, think he's a twat.
Yeah.
You know, I would see people being more honest, or they're not even saying that, just saying, look, we don't get on. We respect each other on track. You know, people want to see some realness to it. You know, if you think about Rossi and his Casey Stoner, Sergio Bernal, Max Biaggi, you know, people love that. I loved it. You know, everybody takes sides. Maybe Rossi and you know, Marquez as well. Everybody taking sides from that. It's exciting, and I think, you know, brings stuff to the sport.
People
not want to do Bemsy. You know, I'm not suggesting that everyone goes out and starts kicking people off and stuff. No,
well, it happens. But you have rivalries, and I think that's what makes competitive sport, isn't it? At the end of the day, these elite athletes, they're more competitive than me. You know, we think we're competitive, but actually they're more competitive, and they'll tell you that as well. Well, you've experienced that, and it's really important for them to have that competitive streak. But that rivalry, I think, helps them. And if things are going right for them, and it's good for your confidence, that take Josh Brooks and Scott Redding a couple of years ago. But actually, the rivalry in the same team, you know, how that friction actually is caused. It's basically you've got one extrovert against one introvert, and Brooks is kind of thinking, well, who's this guy? He's an absolute numpty. He's a twat, you know, and he's coming here thinking that he's all high and mighty. I can beat this guy. Turns out that Scott Redding could be the jester and still win, which I
Yeah,
find is phenomenally brave and really testament to his confidence.
Testament to him being himself. I think, that is why he is what he is, who he is, and why he is successful. A lot of people take a big backward step like he did. He went from MotoGP to BSB. He didn't go World Superbike, and he took a huge step back. I know that. Just trying to think. Then did Shane go? No, Shane went World Superbike and then back. It's the same deal, really. It's like at least Scott has got a decent ride in World Superbike, and I think he's going to be. It's just unfortunate that he's racing against the best Superbike rider that's ever been, by miles.
But this is how they motivate themselves. What way? And if it were you or me, we'd be like, I'm not going to go next. I'm not going to win because there's 3 or 4 riders that are going to be faster than me. Where he's actually gone in there and gone, I'm actually better than this guy, and I can beat him, and I probably will. And he has done. Not the championship, but he has beaten him on a few occasions. And I think he's going into this new championship in World Superbikes, which isn't that far away, actually. Isn't the first one this weekend? I think it might be.
Yeah, I think.
He's fired up and he's fit, and he's publicly showing everyone that he's fit. And it's a bit like a boxing promotion, isn't it? Where they kind of square up to each other and they sort of say, look at me, I know, pinching each other's stomachs to see how fat they are and thin they are and weighing each other. When actually, when it comes to blows, it would be really interesting. But yeah, I think Johnny Ray is he's a fierce competitor, but he's fair, which is good. But I think on the outside, Johnny Ray's quite soft and he's quite amicable, whereas Redding's the opposite. I think Redding is quite aggressive and hard on the outside, but he might be softer on the inside. It's really, I don't think we've seen a rivalry like this for many, many years, probably since Rossi and Biaggi, I would say. It's not violent, it's not a physical or an aggressive rivalry, but it could be.
Yeah, I think World Superbikes this year could be quite good. And I think there should be some privateer. I think Chaz Davis is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year.
I would love to see him do well.
Yeah, I would too. I'm a massive fan. I think him being in an environment where maybe he's not got the factory, and can have a bit more input. And yeah, I think, he seems, and again, you never know, right? You follow these people on social media. He looks well chilled and relaxed.
Yeah.
He's become a dad, right? Is he?
Yeah.
Look at Cal Crutchlow when he became a dad. Jesus, you think, that's it now. It galvanised him. He was like, it was the best thing that ever happened to his racing career.
Yeah.
So I think it could be interesting. I think that
it could be.
Scott Redding, love him or hate him, he's a character, that's for sure.
Well, we need.
He's been doing.
What's that?
He's time trialing. He's been doing on his push bike.
Oh yeah, he's been doing a lot of stuff local to me. He's been doing sort of stuff. Yeah, he's so fit.
Yeah, he's properly like. I saw some sticker. Now, if anybody who's watching this as a cyclist, is doing like 20. It's like 20 minutes. I'm not sure how far, but it's roughly 20 minutes. And he's got a sticker on his thing. Do you remember he used to have stuff in Moto2 on his pit board, didn't he?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but anyway, he's got like a post-it note that says 380 W on it. I'm like, what? He's doing 380 watts for 20 minutes? It's like,
what?
Insane. That is insane. Whether he was doing that or not, I don't know. But he's definitely fit, and obviously he likes cycling, racing against anything and any. Massively competitive.
But they're able, just to touch on it briefly, they're able to take themselves to these dark places when they train because they know, Scott knows, because he's made the mistake of perhaps not training enough. He's been considered fit and healthy and lean and whatever, but he used to really struggle at some of the more humid rounds in Malaysia and not Phillip Island, but it might have been Malaysia and sort of eastern rounds, where he struggled in the heat. And I think he's got that now, and he's taken it, and he's gone, that ain't happening again. And I've never seen a human being train as hard as this guy. Now, he either really wants to win, and he's that determined, which is on a level that I have never, ever seen before. But if he loses now, I don't know what's going to happen to him, because I don't know what's going to happen to him. He's tried hard.
I love the fact that he's talking up going back to MotoGP already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think... You've got to believe, right? You've got to believe, like, Shane believed that he could have been a world champion. You've got to have that self-belief. If you don't, it's just not going to happen for you on any level. If, again, whatever sport you're competing in, you've just, self-belief, you probably could say is the biggest factor of being successful in professional sport.
Amazing. Well, listen, we could chat for hours on this, and I think we've probably got enough material for another 4 or 5 episodes, which we'll probably do at some stage. But what we've got is we have got a chat box, and we've got some questions that have already been coming up while we've been chatting. If we'll have a couple of minutes, so if you do want to type a question in the chat, we're quite happy to read those out. First question from Harrison Desoy's, again, young rider. He says, did Shakey do any exercise before each session to warm up? And if so, how long was the warm-up exercise until he went out?
No.
That's elite.
Didn't do any warm-up at all. When I was like Harrison, when I was going around and looking at, went to World Superbike rounds and I'd look into what people were doing, I saw Ruben Zaus when he was riding for BMW, like in full leathers, helmet on an exercise bike. Thinking, what the fuck, but no, he didn't do any specific warm-up exercises. Didn't need to. Would do his pre, warm-up stretch. Would see a physio if he needed to. But other than that, no. But I know other riders do. Hand-to-eye stuff with rulers and laser beams and all that kind of stuff, which may work for some, it may work for others. Wow. So you got to do what's right for you, Harrison. Practice, see what works for you. Try stuff out.
Great advice. There's still a bit of time if anybody else wants to type a question. Rui49, we're talking about Chaz Davis, and Rui49 has just updated us and said Chaz Davis is actually fastest in free practice too.
There you go.
It's brilliant. Fair play to him.
Was he really fastest in FP2?
Yeah, jeez. I think that's brilliant.
Okay.
But that's good for him because that is a big psychological demon that he's got to have. He's been riding factory Ducati and World Superbike for many, many years, and he's always been the bridesmaid and never the bride. Now this could be the, he's got no pressure on him. There's sometimes people perform when they've got no pressure on them, and you go, got nothing to lose. I'm going to go for it, and it's a similar sort of package. Trap Stack's got a question: who will win this weekend? Your opinion? So he's saying Scott Redding, but this is going to be completely random. Who are you going for?
Do you know what? But where is it? Aragon? No.
I think it's at Aragon. I think, yeah.
He goes well at Aragon, doesn't he? Chaz does.
Get that big old straight for the Ducatis.
Yeah, but the new Kawasaki's, I think. I don't know. I'll tell you what. I'll go Scott Redding and Chaz Davis.
Interesting. I don't know. Do you know what? I would love Chaz Davies to win at least one race, but it's got to be between those three, isn't it? But bearing in mind as well, you've got new guys on Yamahas, you've got BMWs, which I don't know how well they're really going to do, but you've got a lot of new riders in there. I'd love Scott Redding to do the double. I'd love him to do the double. I'm going to go with Scott Redding.
Yeah, could be.
Trapsack says Scott, Chaz, and Ray. That's a pretty safe bet, to be fair, but we'll see. We'll come back to that and we'll find out how they get on the weekend. Brilliant. It's been a pleasure as always. Oh, Rui says Haslam. We forgot about him.
Haslam, and who's riding the other Honda? Bautista.
Yeah, I forgot about those guys.
I don't know whether Leon Camia can get that team sorted or not, but every year they
go. He's a team manager now.
Yeah,
I forgot. That would be interesting. But again, another good rider just riddled by injury. Fair play to him. And Trapsat's got one more question here. What's your favourite circuit?
It's got to be Mugello.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah,
I would.
On my Facebook memories the other day, and I was just like, I looked at it and I thought, holy shit, I've forgotten all about that. And it was like, I don't know what, a V8 engine with like all these trumpets coming out the back. But then above it was like a massive thing of wine with like a tube coming out of it. It was,
I've
yeah,
never, I've
Magello.
never fully recovered from Magello. I think I went 2 years in a row. In fact, I went the first year, and I was so sort of could not believe what I was seeing. I came back and I said, "We've got to go. We got to go. We can't afford it, but we got to go."
Gotta go.
It was just
Yeah,
brilliant.
that was definitely
So Trapstack's
something else.
favourite track, he says, is Phillip Island. Not a bad
Yeah,
circuit. They reckon it's like the it's the Anglesey of the Southern Hemisphere.
Really? Anglesey like Phillip Island.
Yeah.
You have to get up there, right?
In the beach, in the sort of on the coast in the middle of nowhere.
Force
With
blowing off
the 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it'll be lovely and sunny 1 minute, and then pissing rain in about 30 seconds after that. But listen, right, I will let you go because it's getting late, and I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that's tuned in and watched and asked questions. We're going to try and organise the next podcast for, well, whenever we can get it done. Obviously, we're amateurs, we're not professionals, we're doing this in our own free time. But if you're enjoying the content, we're quite happy to do more and make them bigger and better and whatever. So they'll always improve. But if you've got any feedback, then please feel free to sort of message us. Drop Grant a follow if you're on Twitter. His Twitter handle is on there, @BreezeToYou. Feel free to look him up if you've got Twitter. But again, he's also on Facebook, and check him out on Instagram as well. And drop him a follow and a like. He's got loads of brilliant content on there. And what we'll do is we'll put out the feelers for the content for the next podcast and the next episode, and we'll start working on some decent content from that. What's your Instagram handle? Is it the same?
@BreezeToYou. So on Facebook it's BreezeToYou. Instagram is @BreezeToYou. Twitter @BreezeToYou. Just type in BreezeToYou and you'll find me.
Brilliant. Well, listen, again, thanks for joining us. Grant, thanks to yourself as well, and for sort of giving us a scoop of your experience in your brain and coaching these celebrities. I don't envy you at all doing it, because it's quite a unique experience, but quite fantastic all the same. So thanks for everyone, and we'll catch you again another day. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Take care.
Cheers, guys.